Sometimes I do some pretty crazy stuff to try to get the best bird photographs I can get. Hello, good morning. How you doing? It's Phil Thatch, and today I'm at a place that I go way too often. I come here 5 days a week for a total of about 47 or 48 hours a week, and there is a tree in the parking lot of this place where I go way too often. And I discovered while I was hanging around out here one day a Eastern Kingbird nest. As a matter of fact, first I saw an Eastern Kingbird and it was perched over here on one of these two little poles that sticks out off of this light pole. And I walked pretty close to it. I was like, man, if I had my camera, I could get a great picture of that, but I don't bring my camera here. But today, this place is closed and nobody's here, so I came back and I brought my camera and I drove my truck. That way I could get my camera really high. So I'm using my truck as a photography area, and I climb into the back of the truck and then I stand up on that toolbox, and my tripod is mounted on the toolbox, and I'm not dead level with the bird's nest, but I'm pretty close. So I'm going to do some photography right here at this place where I spend way too much time, but it's on my off day now. And there comes one flying in. There's at least 2 nestlings that I've been observing in that nest. And of course there's 2 adults, and hopefully I'll get shots of all of them this morning. I'm using the R6 Mark II, and I'm using my 200 to 800 millimeter Canon lens, which I haven't shot with it in quite some time. Last time I shot with it, as soon as I got done, I lent it out to a friend of mine. I rented it out to a friend of mine, and she took it to Iceland. And then when it came back, I sent it to Canon to see if it had any problems with it, because, you know, I've always kind of struggled with this lens, and my thoughts on it are it's not very sharp, and in order to get it sharp, I have to not all the way to 800. I shoot at 707 or 742, and I have to stop it down to f10 instead of shooting wide open in f9, and then I can get some fairly acceptable results. So I sent it to Canon to see what they had to say about it, to have them check it out, and I was really hoping there was something wrong with it and they were going to replace a couple of elements in it. But nope, they said everything is working perfectly with your lens, there's no problems. So I guess what I'm getting is the best it can get, or at least the best I can get out of it. So anyway, let's get started working on these Eastern Kingbirds here at a place I spend way too much time. All right, here is my first shot from the back of the truck, and you can see I have really good sun angle on these. The sun is at my back and on the birds. I started out really slow on the shutter speed, and I realized I should go faster a little bit later, but I'm at 1/200th f10, and I started out at 800 millimeters, and I also changed that to 742 later on. But here's the first shot of one of the adult birds, and there are nestlings in the nest. You really can't see them, maybe a little bit right here. You can see some of the feathers on one of the nestlings. Here's another shot with very similar settings, ISO 125 on that one, and another adult on the nest shot. And there's a tree in the background here, and to the right there's sky. And what I did was a little bit later on, I scooted my tripod just a little bit to the right. I didn't even have to move my truck, but I scooted my tripod maybe 8 or 10 inches to the right, and it got rid of most of this sky and gave me bokeh-fied trees in the background. Oh, you can actually see one of the young bird's eyes here in this shot. Also in this location, there are beautiful song sparrows, and usually when they're on top of the building, a shot would not look very good, but when you're standing up on the toolbox in the back of a pickup truck, you can get a pretty good angle of the song sparrow on the roof. This is 800 millimeters and 1/200th as well. And now the adult has left the nest, and you can see 2 of the young Eastern Kingbirds with their heads poking up. And they have most of their feathers. I think they're going to be fledging pretty soon. This is 1/320th, 742 millimeters, and ISO 320. Everything in this video is at f10, or all of my shots are. Here's another shot. This one is at 400 ISO of the adult, and that is baby bird poop that the adult is cleaning up out of the nest. I've seen Eastern bluebird do the same thing. They'll go into the nest box and get the bird poop and clean it out. Now I'm up to 1/500th of a second, and this is one of the adult Eastern Kingbirds, and it's caught an amazing looking moth, and it's there at the top corner of the building, and soon it will fly over and feed the youngsters. And here it is in the nest, still at 1/500th, now 1250 ISO for this shot. And you can just see behind these leaves, you can just see a little bit of that moth, which it's feeding to one of the youngsters there. And now you can see some of the dust and things off of that amazing moth on the beak of this adult kingbird. There's another shot of it. And this is still at 1/500th and 742 millimeters. And once again, we're doing some cleaning, getting the baby bird poop out of the nest. Really beautiful. And you can see now as I'm in a slightly different position and I have the tree covering almost all of the background now, which I think looks a little bit better. Always pay attention to your background when you can. Now here's that same adult that had the moth in its mouth, and I made several pictures of it. I really liked this perch that it flew up to just above the nest and slightly to the left of it. And these are all at 1/500th and f10 742 millimeters. I made this one and this one. I really kind of got carried away. And this one, I just kept finding more and more head angles that I like, and I was getting pretty sharp results. So I thought I would share a bunch of them with you. And now it's turned its head in another direction. And if you follow the channel much, you know I like to get shots facing in two directions on the same perch if possible. And one last shot facing in the original direction. Heather's here with me too, and though it's kind of tricky for her to get up in the back of the truck and stand on the toolbox, she can still make pictures in other areas, like when they land on that pole. They just landed on that pole where I originally saw one, and she has the R7 and the 100 to 500. I almost said 200 to 500. She's got the R7 and the 100 to 500, and this is her first time doing bird photography since January. Yeah. And it is June 30th. June 30th, the last day of June. So it's been a minute. She's been busy working on other things that are important to her educationally. And now she's going to sneak in a little bird photography. Okay, these are Heather shots from the morning, and these are all made with the Canon R7 APS-C camera and the RF 100 to 500. She's going to shoot all of these wide open. And this is a killdeer. There's a field very near where we were working, and there was a killdeer running around in the field, and Heather made this photograph of it at 1/640th, 500 millimeters ISO 200, wide open at 7.1. And on the original place where I found the kingbirds, Heather made this photograph of a kingbird that has some prey in its mouth. And so she got a lot of kingbird with prey shots from ground level instead of climbing up on the back of the truck, which is difficult for her. This is 500 millimeters 7.1, ISO 100 and 1/640th of a second. Here's another in that same series of the kingbird with prey on the same perch. Beautiful bird. Here's another one, this time without prey, still at 1/640th, f7.1, 500 millimeters. Heather found this beautiful moth on the ground, and she photographed it at 500 millimeters, 1/400th, wide open at 7.1. And that moth better be careful, because Heather won't hurt it. She'll just take a picture, but those kingbirds will capture that thing and feed it to the babies. Now Heather's up to 1/1250th, and she's got this shot of the kingbird with prey in its mouth, and it banged the bug's head against the post that it was perched on. And look, it knocked its head and its first section with its first set of legs off. I don't know if it doesn't like that particular part of the bug, but anyway, it knocked it off and it fell to the ground. And then the rest of the bug, the kingbird decided to consume down the hatch. Pretty cool. All those were at 1/1250th, 500 millimeters and f7.1. Now Heather's captured this shot also with the same settings on one of the branches of the tree where the nest is. Just a beautiful shot she captured here. And here is what the nest looks like if you're photographing it from the ground instead of standing high up in the back of a pickup truck on the toolbox. This one's also the same settings, but the ISO's down to 1/320th. And as we were leaving, we drove out and there was this jackrabbit there on the side of the road, and Heather made this shot of it, only 300 millimeters for this shot, wide open at 5.6 now, 1/1250th and ISO 400. So it was really nice to have Heather along, and I'm sure you guys have been missing her photos if you follow the channel a lot. So from this spot here up on top of the truck, it's the best angle to see the nest, and the morning sun is rising right at my back. So I've got perfect sun angle on the nest, which is what you look for. And from way up here a pretty good angle on it. I'm still probably, I don't know, I'm probably 3 feet lower than the nest. The camera is, but that's not bad. And I'm standing in the back of a truck that sits fairly high, and I'm standing on top of the toolbox. So this has worked out well. But like I say, I found these birds a while ago, and I've had a lot of time to kind of plan this shoot out. And I think just based on the babies having their flight feathers, the nestlings have their flight feathers, I think they'll be fledging pretty soon. So I got here just in the nick of time. Okay, now we're back to some of my shots. I'm still at 1/500th of a second and 742 millimeters at f10. This is the other adult. It doesn't have all the moth goo on its mouth like the last one did, and it's flown down to the nest, and you can just see a couple of the youngsters there on the nest. Here's another one in that same series. I didn't like the light on the face of the adult in this shot, but I like that you can really see the youngster fairly clearly in this one. Still at 1/500th and 742 millimeters. Another shot in this series. You can see the bottom of the youngster as it's going to ask for food, I would imagine, or it's just about to ask for food. Oh, yep. Now it's asking for some food. Still at 1/500th, 742 millimeters f10 and 1/640th of a second. I don't know if that youngster is going to get fed right now or not, but he sure wants to be. Oh, looks like he might. There's another shot, and nope, denied. Just really beautiful. I love these trees. I don't know what kind of trees these are with these long, thin leaves, but there's several of them at this place, and I really think they're pretty. And now that I know that birds will nest in them, I like them even more. Here's another shot in that series, but now the adult's looking in the other direction, and you can see another one of the youngsters just barely poking its eye up, and now he's poking his head up pretty well. This is still 1/500th and ISO 640 f10 and 742 millimeters. Another shot with the same settings, slightly different. This one's got the youngster's mouth open. And here's another shot in that series. Same settings, the ISO's gone up to 800 now. Oh no, and I've sped my shutter speed up to 1/640th. And here is another shot of the adult with the youngster, still at 1/640th. And another in that same series. Most of the time you couldn't see the nestlings' heads, and even when you could see their heads, you couldn't see their eyes. So when they would poke their head up enough to be seen, I made a lot of shots. And here is another one, just like that, still at 1/640th. And another one, same settings, I'm sure. And another one, slightly different head angle on the adult. And another one, oh, the youngster is asking for food again. Sometimes they bring insect and just give it to the youngster, and other times they do the regurgitation feeding, and that's what's going on here, it looks like. This one doesn't have great focus. I think the focus point landed here instead of on the bird's head. Kind of hard to see an eye to focus on in this shot, but I shared it with you because it does show the bird feeding the youngster. And now the feeding is complete. We're still at 1/640th and ISO 800. Just beautiful. I love the colors in this. It was morning, so I've got kind of almost golden hour light, but it was also overcast, but not 100% overcast. The light was almost exactly the best way you could have it. I thought it really turned out good. And there's another shot in that sequence. And let's see what's next. Another shot in that sequence. That one, the baby's mouth was open. That one, the baby's mouth is closed. Now the adult has flown off, and it's just the youngster by itself. And this is probably the best shot I have of a youngster in the nest without the adult. And you can see over here, you can see the eye of another one of the nestlings there in the nest. And now I'm up to 1/1000th, 742 f10, ISO 1000 for this shot. Same settings for this one as well. These were basically right after one another. And here's another one in that sequence. I've gone back down to 1/800th of a second for this one. Look, it's the adult up on a branch, just looking beautiful. I love the way the bokeh looks of these leaves in the background, just really beautifully rendered. You can see what they are, but they're so soft and beautiful. And the bird is nice and sharp, so that turned out pretty good. This is 1/1000th, f10, 742 on the millimeters, ISO 1000. And now the adult is back on the nest, and this is still the one that doesn't have the moth residue on its beak. Or if it is that one, it's cleaned it off completely. But I like this shot with one of the youngsters looking up at it with its beak wide open. Really love the way this shot turned out. We were actually getting ready to leave. I'd already taken the tripod down. This adult landed on a branch that was pretty close to me, closer than the other branches in that same tree. And this is 742, 1/1000th ISO 640 f10. Just a beautiful, beautiful bird. I made one video clip of the youngsters on the nest with no adults. This was the only video clip I made. I probably should have made more, but I'm really more into photography when I get into these situations than video. But I was glad that I got this clip so I could share it with you of these beautiful little birds. We hope you enjoyed today's video and all the photographs that we shared. If you did, reach down and hit the thumbs up button. If you want to see some more stuff like this, subscribe and hit the bell. And as always, we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.